What's up, Quadcopter fans? TigerJoan.com. Today I'm going to be doing a video on my F450 flame wheel knockoff. Received this about a couple weeks ago. Couldn't get it to fly right. I have a KK 2.15 board on there from Hobby Power. It's a Hobby King internal. I've got the case on there. This came from Hobby Power. This isn't flash right with possibly the newest and latest and greatest firmware, which made it difficult to be able to control the quadcopter. Or I might be experiencing a second problem, is that my rear right motor, or my rear right ESC, is getting hot just by plugging in the battery. So that probably means that there is some sort of an issue with the quadcopter as far as maybe one of the connections. So I'm going to need to investigate that. Biggest issue facing me right now, that's a light that I'll be hooking up later, is that when I took it out to fly, there was some wind. The flight controller was not set correctly. So once it started heading into the wind, I couldn't get any pitch. I couldn't get it back to me. The wind carried it up the mountain, and it got out of range, dropped from the sky, fell down, broke the motor arm where the motor seat goes. On the quadcopter. So I've tested everything to make sure it all still works correctly. ESCs are working, motors are spinning correctly. Problem is I need to replace one of these motor arms. And I ordered some new motor arms. I've received them in the mail. And they're slightly different than the Hobby Power ones that came with the kit. Now, in size, they appear to be the same exact size. It's just this portion here seems to be a little bit different. And these actually feel a little bit sturdier. So I could go the cheap and easy route or fast and quick route and just replace the one that is broken. Or I could do it correctly and investigate the ESC that's possibly overheating or possibly some sort of bad wire connection below. And put all 4 new motor arms on there. And then just use these as my spares in case one of them breaks. I think I'm going to go ahead and go with the option number 2 because these motor arms feel a little bit more solid. So what I'll be doing is I'm going to be taking apart the frame of this. So I'll be unscrewing all these bolts here, or these hex nuts down here, as well as removing the motors, removing the ESCs, putting these back on with the motors, with all the brand new motor arms, and then putting back on the flight controller. I'll be doing a different video on that because I'm going to be flashing the firmware since I did receive the USB flasher, which is needed in order to be able to flash the firmware on the KK 2.15 board, as well as I'm going to need to take the flight controller, the KK 2.15 board, out of the plastic case because even though I bought a 6-pin adapter for the USB flash cable, it won't fit on there. And just to give you an idea, it won't fit on there just due to this case being on here. So there's some screws in the back that you can take it out, which I'll do, and then we'll go ahead and flash this, as well as restore these arms on here, investigate the ESC to figure out exactly why it's overheating. I just might have a bad one. I ordered one just in case, but it is coming from China. So it's going to take a little while to get. They're Hobby Power, some Mach 30 volts. So I couldn't find any here locally in the States. So I will have to search outside of the States for those. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to break down this quadcopter. I'm going to cut off all the zip ties, undo all the hex nuts, and then I'm going to start installing the new arms. And then we're going to go ahead and start installing the ESCs back on, as well as I'm going to take a look at the landing gear that comes with it. Is the white F450 landing gear. It's very flimsy when it's underneath and centered underneath the quadcopter. It feels like it could flip over. Sometimes you might get a bad bounce, or if you don't land just right, it can tip. You could probably put some foam. I've seen some people put some pipes insulation from foot to foot in order to keep it from flipping over, to kind of make it more of like a bird cage look or a landing skid. I'm going to try to find a way in order to be able to install them further out on the motor arms, so then that way there's a wider base, and then that way on takeoffs, when this thing's up in the air and you have your thrust from your motors, your motor thrust, it can thrust down and cause this thing to go goofy. Now, you probably shouldn't do that if it's on auto leveling and all the motors are spinning correctly, all the ESCs are functioning correctly, and the flight controller is functioning correctly. But in my case, that hasn't been happening, so that's something that I need to investigate too as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to fast forward the video. I'm going to keep it on while I do break this down. But I'll cut back once everything's done as far as breaking this thing down apart, and then we'll get back into reinstalling everything and hopefully get to flying within the next day or so. Alright, so I've broken the quadcopter down. As you can see, the top plate's off, the power board's here, arms are all off. So now I'm going to start the installation of the new arms, so that way we can replace the broken one, which broke off, like I mentioned in one of the previous videos. The two arms are not exactly identical, so that's the whole reason why I'm removing all the hobby powers, putting on this new replacement arm. Plus this thing feels a little bit more sturdy. And now I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be doing a couple mod videos of what I'm going to do to this quadcopter in hopes that it will help it out, stabilize it, make it a little bit more safer as far as takeoffs and landings. I didn't like the original setup of the landing gear on here. Basically how it goes is the white landing gear goes under here. You know, your motor arm goes over the top of it. This is in the middle. All four of them are, and it's fairly flimsy. You know, when you land, sometimes it bounces and falls over. So what I've come up with is a new solution, which is this, you know, minus the zip ties. This is very sturdy. This will be on all four of them. It'll be exact, you know, I'm going to line everything up exactly the same. So that way I'm going to have a sturdy base on all four of my motor arms, because what happens is that sometimes when you apply your throttle thrust, these motor arms bend down if you have the landing gear on in the middle, since it's plastic and flimsy. Bends down, and then it causes kind of a wobble just right off the bat when you're getting started. So I'm hoping to eliminate that with this. But in order to do so, I'm going to actually have to reposition the ESCs, because the ESCs aren't going to be able to fit down here snug and flush. If I put it snug and flush, you'll see that I'm going to be cut off right here, and I won't be able to put my motor wires in there. So what I'm going to have to actually do is I'm going to have to run the wires up top, or the ESCs up top, and then when I come over here, I'm going to have to either unsolder. I'll either have to unsolder these wires, or I found out a different solution. It's a little bit of a cheaper solution and faster, is I'm just going to run the wires to the outside and then screw in there, and then put the top plate over here, and these ESC wires will just be running to the side. So a little bit of slack here, so I'm not worried about it bending or coming undone. But that'll give me the option to be able to put these landing gears on closer out towards the motor seats or the motor boots here. So then that way hopefully it'll take off nice and stable upwards, as opposed to, you know, the motor arms fluctuating around. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get started on that. I'm going to go ahead and put the first one on, and then I'll speed up the video and, you know, until I get all of them on. But I want to show you how I'm going to do the first one. So, you know, here's the top of the bottom of the board, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find my motor arm number, or motor number 1, which I've got labeled on here. If you haven't labeled your motor layout, it would be wise to do so in case you do need to take this thing apart, so that way you can tell exactly, you know, what's what. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and put this down flat like so. I'm going to run the, I'm going to go ahead and run the wires to the outside. Like this. And then I'm going to get my hex screwdriver. If you haven't picked one of these up, well worth the money. Get one off Amazon. Nice and cheap. You can get them for about $8. 4 different hex nut sizes. And then we're going to go ahead and get this onto this screwed in here. So you can actually bend the ESC back at the moment. It's not critical. Not until we get to the top plate that we really have to watch the wire position. So I'm just going to get this in here a little bit snug, and then that way I can show you what the next step is in order to reposition the ESCs on the top. Now, you might be thinking, why would you put the ESCs on the top since it's so close to the propellers? That could be a valid point. You know, if it crashes, the propellers bend, if you got some cheap propellers on there, it might come right down onto the ESC, since the ESC will be sitting up top. But really, since this thing is open and exposed, nothing's really safe on this, you know, so not too concerned. But basically, this is how it's going to look. Both the red wire, the black wire is going to run on this side, red side wire is going to run on this side, right into the power board. ESC will then be zip tied down to this motor arm, so it'll be safe and secure. And then what we'll be doing is we'll be, you know, putting on the landing gear, which will go on here. You know, we'll get it flush and level, and then that way we'll be able to run this landing gear up here. Motor will go here, and then it'll be a nice, easy, straight-in connection with the motor to the ESC. We'll just use zip ties there. It'll give us enough clearance with the propellers, so we shouldn't have any issues. And then as far as the issue with the top plate, because originally I thought I was going to have to unsolder and then take the wires, run them down through here, and then solder them back in there, but I'll be able to get away with it by just putting the top plate on like so, and then that way it's going to go ahead and it's going to eliminate the need to unsolder these wires, and it'll give me the ability to be able to create some slack there too if needed, or I can make this snug as possible, which I don't want any loose wires around in this area. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work on that, putting on the rest of the motor arms, and so I'll be speeding the video up while I go ahead and complete that process. Alright, so as you can see, all the motor arms are on. We've got the whites in the front, the reds in the black. This time they came in like almost a maroon color. Like you can see here, I have the wires running on the outsides of the motor arms, because I will be attaching the ESCs to the top, like previously stated before. And then what will happen is that these wires will run in. I'll just go ahead and put the motor or the top plate on, so then that way you can get a visual of what it will look like once it's done. But very simple. Now you might have your configuration a little bit different as far as how you're gonna set your quadcopter up and your ESCs and how you want them to run. This is just something that I'm gonna do on mine, because I want to incorporate that landing gear and make it more effective. So that's basically the end product of what you'll be looking at as far as changing your motor arms. Now again, you know, you might decide to go underneath, which is completely fine, but this video is simply just to demonstrate, you know, changing out these motor arms. Very easy to do, very cheap to do. I only paid about $7 for the new ones, a set of 4. You know, unfortunately I broke one, so you have to replace them all. But the good news is now I have 3 additional motor arms, so in case I do break one, I'll have some in my inventory that I can change out in the future. So this video helped you out anyway. Definitely give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe to the channel for more upcoming videos. Stay tuned for the completion of the different modifications that I'll be doing to this F450 DJI flame wheel knockoff, as in regards to, you know, relocating the ESCs, also, you know, putting on the battery. I'm going to be sticking that in through the bottom, changing out the landing gear. Additionally, I'm going to be putting some lights on the quadcopter 2 as well. You need this piece here, and some light strips that are going to run around the motor arms. So it should be looking pretty cool here shortly. So stay tuned for those videos too as well. I'll be posting them up on the channel. And again, if this video helped you out, be sure to subscribe to the channel.